Hello, I'm bringing you my final Lent course video entitled To Be a Pilgrim. And I'm shooting this one also in Norwich Cathedral. And I have my staff with me, the staff that was blessed here on the day that I set off on my pilgrimage. A few weeks later, it was another Sunday morning in a village just outside of Winchester where I'd spent the night in the pub. I needed to get to the station, and for the first time on my journey, it was seriously raining. So I ordered a taxi. The taxi driver, who was a Muslim, asked about my staff, and I explained that I was on a pilgrimage, at which point he got very engaged and asked what rules I had to follow. Somewhat embarrassed and feeling rather lame because I know the rules for those who take the Hajj and the Amma are very clear, I explained that it was my own personal pilgrimage and I'd made up the rules that I was following. There is a very strong Christian tradition of pilgrimage, but nothing is definitive. It has always been a matter of choice. Somewhat controversially, Jesus himself never went on pilgrimage, nor did he call his disciples to do so, though on specific occasions he did send them out. But you could argue that his entire ministry can be seen as one long pilgrimage, with Jerusalem as the destination, and punctured by many encounters he had with different people along the way. One of the tensions I struggled with early on was should it be a priority to get to every cathedral, which of course begged the question of what was a cathedral. I wanted to stay true to the aim, but at the same time, I did not want to have a kind of collector mentality. This means that I still haven't finished. Ironically, this has helped me with subsequent events, but more of that later. Another question that troubled me is what was most important, the destination or the journey? I had set myself the task of praying in British cathedrals, so I actually had a huge number of destinations. Some of them felt truly significant. I remember the thrill I had of entering Canterbury Cathedral on the final morning of my first journey. Canterbury is used to receiving pilgrims. You can even make contact beforehand and arrange for a canon of the cathedral to pray with you. I did this, and after the service I attended, Canon Emma took me to the site of the Becket tomb and said a simple prayer. She then pointed me to the stained glass around that area, featuring as it did scenes from medieval pilgrimages, ordinary, real people like myself. I felt profoundly connected with them across the ages as I stood there. There were certain other places that I had wanted to visit or revisit. Bardsey Island had been somewhere I had wanted to set foot on for over 30 years after I first glimpsed it on a holiday when Louise and I were tentatively exploring whether we might get married. In Liverpool, although I'd been to the Anglican Cathedral on several occasions, I had never been to the Roman Catholic one. It was far more magnificent than I imagined. But one of the best things was walking from one to another up the appropriately named Hope Street. And Lindisfarne, that semi-barren rock that is cut off from the mainland twice a day, had been somewhere I'd been before and knew well. It felt the perfect place to bring my journey to a close. But there had also been unexpected delights on the journey. There were things that happened to me that were totally unplanned and which enhanced my time. I had made a decision to embrace distraction and delay when it occurred, and this bore fruit. I'm going to talk about a person, a picture, and a place that helped to fulfill my journey. None of them were planned, all were a blessing. The person was Gavin, one of the many homeless people that I met while out and about. I'd worried about how to approach homeless people. Didn't seem right to just walk on by while I was on a pilgrimage, but I didn't want to give money either. I decided to ask their name and then to see if they were willing to try and learn a bit more about them and why they were homeless. I met Gavin outside Reading railway station, and of course he wanted money. But he responded with interest when I asked him about himself. I can't recall the details, but we chatted on the street corner for about 5 minutes. I then took myself off to the ruins of Reading Abbey, sitting in the shadow of the soon to be demolished jail. Well, that's before Banksy put his artwork on it. On my way back into town, I saw Gavin across the road, not begging now, but on his way somewhere. He saw me, waved, and called out my name with a grin before moving off on his business. I felt blessed by a genuine human connection rather than a transactional one. The piece of art was in Bradford Cathedral. My journey to Bradford had been difficult. It had rained all day. Flooding in the Sheffield area had led to enormous delays on the trains. The train I finally caught from Leeds to Bradford was dramatically overcrowded, and there was tension between the passengers due to a man with a minor disability trying to keep two seats to himself when people were standing down the main corridor. By the time I got to Bradford, it was getting dark. The cathedral was not easy to find. I was wet, and my pack felt heavy. As I walked in, a voice greeted me saying, "Are you coming in to get out of the rain, or are you visiting?" Given how long it had taken me to get there, I felt entitled to be a bit miffed. But I got over it when I realised that quite a few people were clearly using the building as somewhere to sit and chat that was dry and relatively warm. However, in St Aidan's Chapel, I found this amazing cross, the Pilgrim's Cross. At a distance, it looks like the figures are climbing over each other in order to reach their goal. It almost looked like something out of a Dante picture of hell. Closer inspection revealed that the figures on the cross were helping each other, not climbing over each other, hauling up higher those who were following in their path. The unexpected place was my penultimate destination. I was staying the night with Mark, an old friend from university days, who lives in the village of Felton, 20 miles or so north of Newcastle. From there, I was going to make my final journey to Linda's farm. I hadn't seen Mark for 15 years or so, and we did a bit of catching up, and I'd expected that. Meeting up with old friends had been an important part of my journey. And planning it, I'd realised that I would need to meet with people, or else I could have become very lonely. The whole idea of the sabbatical was to refresh and resource me, and it seemed a good way to go about it. The surprise was the Northumbria community. I knew of the Northumbria community. I'd been using their prayer book for years. The simplicity of their liturgy for morning and evening prayer is something I find really appealing, along with the few short readings that are prescribed for each day. Temperamentally, it suits me much better than the wordiness of some formal Anglican liturgies. I knew Mark had a connection with the community. What I'd missed completely is that their headquarters were at the other end of the village, and he took me up there to join in their prayers that morning. To be saying prayers that are so familiar with the group from whom they originated was another special movement, an unexpected blessing. The journey needed a destination, but just focusing on that would have made it a very sterile experience. As I travelled across Britain, I was always open about being a pilgrim. To my surprise, it nearly always provoked a positive reaction, such as the one such that the one occasion that I encountered mockery was the exception that proved the rule. But it was somehow more than that. It was not uncommon for a wistful look to appear in people's eyes and for them to say something like, I'd love to do something like that. I don't know what longing that was tapping into. In detail, it could have been all sorts of long, cherished dreams. In our post Christian, or in my opinion, to be more precise, our post Christendom age, we have to find new ways of talking about faith, ways that engage without threatening, ways that excite and help people to experience something of the wild, unpredictable, raw love that comes from God. I can only say that in the 3 months that I was a pilgrim, with no clerical collar, only my staff, only my staff and my rucksack, that I had many interesting conversations about faith and the things of God, more than I would normally do. A final note. As I indicated earlier, I didn't quite finish the pilgrimage. Both Guildford and Ripon were Anglican cathedrals that eluded me. Ripon I visited shortly after finishing while attending a friend's funeral in Richmond, but with coronavirus, Guildford has remained beyond my grasp. I will get there. Last March, sitting in a hotel room in Leeds, contemplating impending lockdown and arranging to bring my daughter home the following day, like most people, I was feeling shocked and fearful for the future. I decided to restart my blog. My blog had been a connection with all sorts of people throughout the journey, and as our connections were being closed down, it seemed an important thing to do. It seemed to me that suddenly the whole country had been plunged into an unwanted and unintended pilgrimage, where the normal rules of life had been changed and the end was unclear. Using the language of pilgrimage and the memories of my time have helped me to cope through the last year, and that has therefore helped me to help others. In many ways, I realize I'm still on the journey. In fact, I think we all are. Final set of optional homework. Question 1. When you travel, what's more important, the journey or the destination? Question 2. Some people have suggested that pilgrimage is a pre-Christian concept that has become assimilated into Christianity. I suggest that Jesus' entire ministry could be interpreted as pilgrimage. What do you think? Question 3. How do you respond to homeless people when they ask for money? And question 4. How does my suggestion that coronavirus has been something of a collective, if unwilling, pilgrimage for the nation feel to you? You might feel it strikes a chord, or it might feel completely irrelevant, or even make you angry. I'd like to know. Thank you very much for sharing with me as I've shared, listening with me as I've shared some of my journey from late 2019. Continues to be a very important influence for me. Now may God bless you and keep you safe this day and always. Amen.